Today we're going to look at an alternator on a 2012 Honda Odyssey. The symptoms are check charging system is flashing on the display between the tachometer and the speedometer, and then the battery light is on, indicating a low voltage issue caused by either A, a dead battery, or B, a bad alternator. Tests from AutoZone, O'Reilly, wherever you go, tests from their charging meter show that the voltage regulator is bad, meaning in this case that the voltage regulator is inside the alternator, and the alternator therefore is bad, needs to be rebuilt or replaced. So today we're going to look about how we can replace the alternator. It sits right down there. Here we go. Here are the tools we'll use today. We'll use this belt tool, 14mm socket on that. We're going to use pliers. I'm going to use these vice grips. Those are to plug the power steering main feed hose so it doesn't bleed everywhere when you're working. We got 14mm sockets. We have a 13mm socket. And then of course we have the 10mm socket. Flathead screwdriver for undoing little clips. 10mm wrench, 1/4 inch drive and extension. And then we have the 3/8 inch drive ratchet and 3/8 12mm. The gloves are great for when you're pulling the alternator out and reinstalling it so you don't completely bash your knuckles to pieces. And these are all the tools. The first thing I'll do is disconnect the battery. It sits under this air intake tube. Simply, you'll reach under these clips. With a flathead screwdriver, you will pull the clip up, like so. And then the whole unit will come out like this. It's a 2-piece clip. Then the whole air intake tube will come off. Alright, then we'll disconnect the negative side. This is so nothing cranks and so you don't have any big hot wire to the alternator. Negative side is disconnected after some 10mm action. Alright, the first things I'm going to do are remove the power steering reservoir. We will hit this hose clamper right here, pull this off, plug this so we don't dump power steering fluid everywhere. Then we have 10mm, 10mm, pull this guy out. The next thing I'll do is remove the serpentine belt. There's a rental tool that you can get that can help you remove that. I'll show you what that looks like. Then I think we will also need to remove this coolant reservoir here, because you can see there's a big tank down here. The alternator we're removing is here, and we're going to need room in here to pull the alternator under this air conditioning hose and up through this hole that we're creating. Alright, power steering reservoir. There's the hose clamp. It's going to bleed a little bit, but you can clamp it with some vice grips, like so. 10mm, 10mm. Alright, now the reservoir is free. I'm going to pull it up and out. Now there is another line on the bottom of the reservoir I did not disconnect. You can see it right there. I'm going to leave that plugged in and just set the reservoir right up here on the radiator support. Now you can see the hole is getting bigger. Now we'll take this guy out. This coolant tank uses the same kind of clip as the battery. And then at the bottom there is a little line here. It's from the radiator. And then there's some sort of slider here. I think it just slides up and out. Alright, there's that. I left this line plugged in. It's got a rubber hose, and it's got a hard line, and those just clip into different two different clips down here. I'm going to leave him sitting up here out of the way as well. So now we have this big hole. I think with some gentle moving, I might undo this brace up here for this AC hose so we get another inch or two. I think we'll be able to get the alternator right out. I am using this rental tool and a 14mm socket on the end. We're going to grab onto the tensioner with this. Give it some torque. See how that loosens the belt. I'll say this is a great time to assess the condition of your belt. There's power steering fluid on this. It didn't hurt it. But check in here. Look for cracking. Look for exposed threads. Look for terrible things, because this belt runs everything. So if it breaks, you will be stranded. Alright, quick look at where we are. The belt's off. Now here's the new alternator. Here's the big main power feed. Looking down, you can see that same piece right there. See the nut? And then looking at the connection right here on the back of the alternator, we can see that it is this wire here, so we need to figure out the clip on that. I'm going to go ahead and disconnect this 10mm that's holding this wiring loom in place that takes all the wiring down to the alternator. I'm going to move that out of my way. Alright, now this wiring loom is free. Next thing I'll do is the big main power feed on the top. Alright, the tool for this job is a 13mm socket on a 1/4 inch drive ratchet. Once you break it loose, throw an extension on there. Comes out very, very easily. Alright. This main power feed is off. There's a rubber boot that covers it. Next thing is this wire right here. We're going to get that clip off. I keep referring back to our new alternator for reference because it just gives me a really good picture of what we're doing. So we already undid this guy. Now we're going to take this clip off. Now you notice the clip is going to be on the front of the vehicle. So we're going to grab it, excuse my filthy hands, we're going to grab it like this, push the clip in, pull it off. There is a rubber boot on this clip as well to protect it from the elements, heat, water, dirt, all the nasty things that make junk not work. So you just pull it off, and then you will grab the clip. I feel it. Give it a wiggle, and it's not going to want to come out because it's really tight. It has good connections, so you'll need to work it back and forth gently until it comes out. Now this time, don't get discouraged. This stuff isn't always easy. That's why mechanic shops charge you a few $100s labor for a job like this. There it is. You can see the clip is here. You just push that down, and this little square here clips right over this right here. Just got it in less than a minute. So just grab hold of it, wiggle it back and forth, and you can pull it right out. Okay, wiring is off, the belt's off. The next thing we'll do is remove the 2 bolts to keep this thing bolted to the engine, and then we will pull it right out. The upper bolt is 12 millimeter. And the lower bolt, you can see right there, is 14. All right, here's the 12 millimeter that I pulled out. And here is the 14 millimeter. The alternator is now free. So I've wiggled the alternator around a little bit, and you can see that this is the air conditioning compressor, and here is wiring for that. You want to make sure you aren't busting up this wiring as you pull the alternator out. So I'm going to be very careful of that. I think I'm going to go ahead and unplug it just to be sure. There's a clip right here on the right side. Alright, to give me just a little more clearance, I'm going to remove this bracket right here. Underneath it, there is a 12 millimeter bolt. Alright, literally on the first try, I cleared all these things. It was not easy. What I did is I basically bent this AC line like a 1/4 inch towards the front of the car, and I brute forced the alternator out without even really hurting anything. This thin AC line here was untouched. The alternator, I turned it with the power side straight up and this tab straight up, and I got to this point here. From here I'm going to pull it up, and I might just need to move this AC line by doing that 10 millimeter, move it that way. Getting it in will be much more difficult, but it seems very accomplishable. Alright, the AC line is free. Undid this guy here. Just gives me an inch of playroom. Here we are. Before installing the new alternator, make your life easier. Remove that guy in the washer. So that's one less thing to do while it's down in the spot where it's not easy to work on. Alright, remember, the black end goes in first. And it just fit like a glove. We're going to start bolting that alternator back in. I'm going to start with the bottom bolt. It's going to be the bigger 14 millimeter. So I put it in, and it looks like we'll need to align the alternator a little bit. So I'll grab it on the back side here, move it around till that bolt shoves in. Bottom bolt is threaded. Now we'll do the 12mm top bolt. Again, you'll just move the alternator around until the hole lines up. Actually, let's bolt in the little bracket that I took off. This guy here has one 12mm. The alternator bites into that right here. There's a welded nut on the back of it. Now I'll put the top bolt in. Finger tighten it all. I'm going to tighten the bracket now. Crank the bottom bolt in. Let's see if I can get that any farther with fingers. The answer is yes. Yes, I can. Now for the wrench. Now grab the 12mm again. Tighten down the top bolt on the alternator. Good and snug. Next we'll connect electrical. So remember the clip on the back. Just make sure this clip here is on the left side. Find your connector. Click. Now grab the protective boot. Protective boot right here. Make sure it goes over the whole connection. Next we're going to reconnect the main power feed from the alternator to the charging system. Pull the power boot back. Slide the magical ring over and then put on. It was 13mm, the new one came with a 14mm nut. So grab a 14mm socket in your 1/4-inch drive, send it down. Main power is reconnected and I slipped the rubber boot, protective boot over it. Now we're going to reattach this wiring loom. Simply slides into place. You see the hole right here. We'll put the 10mm bolt through there. Next we will reconnect this air conditioning. Next we'll reconnect this air conditioning line bracket that gave us the room to work. Also 10mm. As always, it is nice to pull up a diagram of the belts because when I was putting the alternator in right here, I did, the belt came off here and here as I slid the alternator out, so it kind of lost the integrity of that, so I had to look up a diagram just to double check that I was putting the belt in correctly. Alright, the next thing you'll do is you grab your tensioner tool, put it on the tensioner, and then you'll slide the belt right over the alternator right there. See that? Now I always run my hand all around the belt to make sure that all the grooves are lined up with the grooves they're supposed to be in. I'm reaching around back here and checking the harmonic balancer just to make sure all the belts are lined up, because you don't want it to throw a belt the first time you fire the thing up.